Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn and I am so stoked about the topic that I'm going to be digging into today. We're going to be talking about 10 mistakes that you're making with your discovery calls. I feel like this information, if taken and applied to your business, can change everything for you. So we're going to dig into 10 ways that you're making mistakes, maybe not all 10, but hopefully a few that you're making that we can correct so you can get even better at your discovery calls. Before hopping into today's episode, I want to mention our good friends over at VidFlow. If you're not familiar with VidFlow, this is a one-stop shop for you to upload your footage to deliver to your couples. The galleries are incredible. You take your footage, you upload them. They're customizable. You can do all kinds of crazy great things and deliver in like a gallery to your clients. And I embed the gallery into my website. It's very clean. It's very professional. And the couple can then download the footage in high resolution. It's a great place for you to really wow your customers. Please stop sending Vimeo or YouTube links and upgrade to VidFlow today. If you head over to howtofilmweddings.com/VidFlow, you can learn all about what their services are. You can see like tutorials of us using it. So be sure to check out our friends over at VidFlow. Now, hopping into today's content, 10 mistakes you're making with your discovery calls. The very first one is that you're not having a discovery call at all. Number one, you aren't even having a discovery call. Be honest. Is that you? Are you just putting your prices on your website, hoping people book? You're just not into selling people. You don't want to come across as like that 1980s or 90s used car salesman. So you're just like, here's my prices, book me. That's it. If you want to book me, great. If you don't want to book me, great. I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table and you're not serving your client well. This is a rookie mistake that I made before. Just here's all the prices, here's all the details. I'm giving you all the information. I think about going to a restaurant where there's just a menu up on the wall, maybe McDonald's. If you haven't noticed, it's much more expensive than it used to be, but it's still considered very cheap food. People assume that they want the burger, the fries. I'm actually kind of getting hungry talking about it. But anyway, they assume what they want just based off of looking at the menu. If you're not having the discovery call, you're basically just saying, here's a menu, pick what you think is best. And then if you contrast that with maybe a fine dining experience that you've had, or even just a good waiter at a decent restaurant, if you notice, if you go to a decent restaurant, the prices are more expensive, but you get a different level of service. You're not going to just get a menu. You're going to get a waiter that probably knows a little bit about it in the mid-level. If you get to a really fancy Michelin star restaurant, they're going to be a very simple menu. They're going to walk you through and ask you questions, get to know the kind of food you want, get to know what kind of experience you want, and then use their expertise to tell you something maybe you didn't even know. That wine pairs really well with that entree, or that dessert is going to work really well if you're gluten-free. They know things, and they're not just saying, here you go, take it or leave it. When you just give your client full access to your pricing on your site, you're telling them, you figure it out. You're not serving them. And that can be detrimental and a huge mistake that you're making on your discovery call. So that's number one. Number two, you're not preparing your couple for the call. So a lot of people will have an inquiry form on their website, which is great, and then an auto link to set up a call. And that's all. And a couple inquires, they don't know the pricing. They just get an inquiry link or a link for a Zoom call, and they sign up and they get on the call. And that's pretty much it. Like you didn't get them ready. They didn't know your starting range. You spent an hour on the call only to find out their budget was $10,000 less than you're offering, or there's a lot of things that you can do to make your consultation calls, your discovery calls better just by preparing your couple for the call. So they need to know the starting range. Like in my on my website, it has a starting range. And after they inquire, I send them a link to schedule a Zoom call with me. And I say, just as a reminder, the starting range is over here at this amount of money. And here's a link to go ahead and schedule the call. I am showing them my lowest possible price, but giving them at least a range, so I'm not leaving them, just kind of empty-handed. It's serving them. Again, that's kind of the heart behind all this, is we want to serve them. And if you're preparing them with the cost, you're serving them by not wasting their time either. And the other things that you can do to prepare your couple is you can give them a little bit of a rundown on what it's going to be like on the call. We're going to take this amount of time to do this. We're going to, it's going to take this long. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to have a follow-up call. All those kinds of things are things you can be doing to prepare your couple for the call. So number 2, you're not preparing your couple. Start preparing. Start thinking through your buyer journey, what you want for your couples, and say, I want to prepare them this way. You don't want to give them too much information, but you want to prepare them for the call. So number 3, I think this is also very important, and I've seen a lot of benefit from this, and this might sound crazy, but number 3 is that, especially I'm talking to those that do online meetings, consultations, your studio space needs to look very good, very professional. I cannot tell you how many times I've been on a call in this exact setup. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. But if you're listening, I've got a nice key light. I've got some practical lights behind me. I've got little lamps. I've got some texture on the wall. I've got a hair light. I've got a microphone. It sounds good. And there's been a lot of times where I have booked a couple because they were like, you put that much attention into the presentation of your office and your sound. We knew that you were going to be the right filmmaker for us, because if you paid that much detail to that, we know you're going to pay that much more attention to the details of our wedding. So spend the extra money. It's not that much money to get a good light, a good camera, plug it into your laptop, make sure the space looks nice and feels like what you want it to do. Your studio space should be professional. A lot of times I'll get on with people and it just, their MacBook camera and the audio is kind of tinny. And if you spend $500, you can turn your studio into something that is going to set the impression for your client. So your studio space isn't professional. That's a huge mistake I see people making with their discovery calls. Number 4, this is a big one. So if you've tuned out, tune back in. Number 4, the right people aren't on the call. And what I mean by that is, have you ever had like an incredible call with a bride, with a groom, and then find out that the parents are the ones making the decisions, and the parents say, no way are we going to spend that budget, and then the couple just says, sorry, we're not going to book because my parents said my budget's $2,000. Sorry. And you spent an hour getting to know this couple, hearing all about their wedding. You love them. Sorry, they're not on the parents aren't on the call. A couple things. You can prepare in your preparations. You can say who you would like to be on the call. You can tell them any decision makers, if mom's helping pay or making decisions, we strongly advise that you bring them along. Like, we're fully transparent. We would love them to be along, your wedding planner, any decision maker we want on the call. And a lot of times for me, that does not include the groom. The groom doesn't have to be on the first call. I want to get to know him, but if I talk to the bride and her mother, which I'm doing right now for a wedding that I'm about to book, and I'll tell you about maybe next week on the podcast if I do book it. I met with the bride and the mom, and now we're in negotiations afterwards. And the mom and I are actually talking this afternoon after I get done recording this podcast. And so mom's the decision maker. She's the one with the checkbook. I need to make sure the right people are on the call. So if all you're saying is like, let's meet, you're not taking just a minute to say, hey, if you want to invite whoever, if you guys are paying for it, whoever's paying for it, if you want to invite them to be on the call, go for it. A little 4B before moving on to 5 bullet point is, if the decision makers can't be on the call, and I do this with Zoom regardless, record the call, record the whole call as if mom is going to be watching it. And at the end of the call, say, I know that mom couldn't make it today, so I'm recording this call and I'm going to email this over to you if she wants to watch it, see my heart, see where things are at, and see that I'm not just over here trying to sell you something. And I think a lot of people, if you think about the buyer journey, you've got bride and groom, they got engaged, mom and dad are trying to pay for it. Bride is excited about flowers. Bride is excited about cake, about the venue, about the dress. Dad and mom are like, that cost $3,000, that cost $10,000, that one cost $20,000. They're adding up numbers, and it's very transactional. And then they hear about the video guy or the photos or whatever it is you do. It's like $10,000, $8,000. No, you can find somebody cheaper than that. The truth is, you can find somebody cheaper than that. And your consultations, your discovery calls are the things that are going to elevate you above the competition. Your website has to do that, and your branding has to do that. And there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. But if the right people aren't on your call and they can't see you and they can't hear your voice and they can't hear what you're wanting to do and how you're going to serve them, you're missing out big time on potential bookings. I can't tell you, I bet my booking rate is 80% if I can get mom on the initial call, because they see that I care about what she has to say and I relate to her and her needs. And that's what we're doing in sales. We're showing them that we're going to fulfill their needs. We're showing them that we're going to be there to serve them, that they are the hero of the story. And we'll talk about that in a little while. So number 4, the right people aren't on the call. Get the right people on the call. Automate that somehow. Do whatever you need to. And I've mentioned this a little bit, but number 5 is you're not telling them how the call will work. You can do this when preparing. And I do this both when we're preparing for the call and like some automations go out like, hey, the call's in an hour. This is what we're going to go over. It should take 15 minutes. It should take 30 minutes. We're going to talk about, your wedding. I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do. And then I will take and turn that into a custom proposal as a reminder, budget range is somewhere between here and here. So excited to talk to you. That's part of the preparation. But then when I'm even on the call, I start out the call by letting them know, hey guys, I'm so pumped that you're here. I just want you to know, I know you're making a ton of decisions. My goal is not to twist your arm and figure out a way to get you to spend money with me. I've been doing this for 19 years and I've never not had a wedding season that was full. My goal is to hear what you're needing and see if I can serve you, see if I can help you get to the finish line with what you want for your wedding. So I just need you to know I'm not here to figure out how to charge you more. My goal today is to discover and hear what you want for your wedding film, how you plan to use it, why it's important. I want to know all the details so that I can put together something custom for you. We talked about that restaurant scenario earlier. When you walk up and you go to a nice restaurant and sit down, a waiter that's going to make a lot of money is going to start asking questions. They're not going to just come up and say, this is our special. This is what you should get. Do you want to buy this thing? No. They're going to warm you up. They're going to feel the room. They're going to read the room. If I'm joking with the waiter needs to be joking back. They're there to serve. Literally, they're a server. And some of the best experiences that I can think about in restaurants specifically are when the waiter helps guide me to understanding what it is that with their kitchen, with their food would be the best decision for me. And, I'm a filet mignon kind of guy, like naturally, I'll take the filet mignon, I'll take a baked potato and some creme brulee. But if the waiter knows that I'm really into smoked meat, he might say, you might want to try these ribs, you might want to try this pulled pork, you might want to try whatever, because this is the best in town. This is why, and he could get me to find things about like what I'm looking for that I didn't know was there. You can get full by going to McDonald's, and you can also have an incredible experience by going to a fancy restaurant. And for me, I want my brand to kind of be in that upper end, and the experience level matters. And so if I'm not telling them how the call is going to work, and I'm not like getting to know them, and I'm not reading the room, like this is really difficult for you to be able to serve them in a way that's going to help them. So I start the call letting them know how it's going to work, that I'm not there to twist their arm, and that I'm there to discover like what is important and to see if I'm the right fit when it comes down to it. And I'm telling them what I want to do is learn about your wedding. I'll tell you little bits and pieces about how I do what I do. I will let you ask questions. And then from there, I'm going to take that information, give you kind of a ballpark range, by the end of this call, and then I want to schedule a follow-up call because I'm going to build a proposal and I want to walk you through that proposal. As opposed to just saying, I'm going to hand you a menu, I'll come back and just you order whatever you want. I might hand you the menu, start looking at let you look at things, and then you might have questions. And so that's kind of the idea that I'm moving into my discovery calls is I want them to feel comfortable, like they're not going to be being sold to, and that they are already seeing the expertise that I bring. I'm their guide. And so, I said earlier, I've been doing this 19 years. I mean, that helps them to see, oh, okay, I can let down some of my defense. Our nervous system and our brain, our minds, we are trying to defend against being sold to. And if you do a bad job as a salesman, people are going to put their walls up even more. But the more that you reiterate and help get those walls taken down, the more you can help the parents or the bride and groom see this is way less of a transactional kind of decision and more of an emotional and relational decision. And if all you're doing is talking numbers and all you're doing is getting some people might like that, but a lot of people won't like that. And so, you're not telling them how that call is going to work. You haven't prepped them. These kinds of things are going to be huge mistakes in your brand. Before we go on to the last half of this podcast, I want to remind you of our good friends over at VidFlow. I mentioned them at the top of the hour, but howtofilmweddings.com/VidFlow. All the details that you need are on that website to get your delivery game up and running and better. You can pay for projects, you can get a subscription. There's a lot of things you can do with VidFlow to help your digital delivery be seamless and be amazing and part of the experience for your couples. So we've gone through points 1 through 5 on ways that you are making mistakes with your discovery calls. Number 6, you're trying to work a script. You have a script in front of you and you're trying to read the bullet points. I've seen this done as I've watched and mentored different wedding filmmakers. They start with, how are you guys doing today? And then the couple answers, when did you get engaged? And they start asking, it just feels very robotic. And the problem with that is that a conversation never should feel scripted. People their spidey senses kind of this guy's trying to sell me something. And like we were talking about in the last point, we want people to be comfortable, and working from a script is going to do that to people. Instead, I recommend having more of an outline for things that you want to make sure that you hit, especially if you're newer in sales. I love to start with connection and figuring out what commonalities we have, where, the venue is, oh, I've been there before, or their friend used me, or they like this sport, or they like this whatever it is, I'm finding common ground to connect so they see I'm a real person. I don't know about you, but if I figure out that I filmed one of their friends' weddings and I see we have mutual friends on Instagram before the call, and I'm like, oh, they have 20 mutual friends, that's a huge level up for me in my call. If I'm like, hey, I saw on Instagram you're friends with Emma and Rob. I just did their wedding. And oh my gosh, their wedding was awesome. And so knowing connections and knowing having an outline that you want to connect first, and you want to hear about them and what their desires are, you can start to determine, like Sam Jacobson would say, their buyer types, and maybe they're a relator and they want to relate to their audience, or they're a dreamer and they just want this big epic party, or, all these different things you're learning. And it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book where page 1, at the bottom of page 1, it says either go to page 54 or go to page 267. It's different for different couples. And so depending on the clues that you're getting, if you're on a call and dad's on the call and he's one of these boss types and he's like, let's just get down to brass tacks, John, how much is this going to cost me? I don't want to be like, well, let me tell you about my childhood. No, I can still flow and understand how to be the one in control of the conversation and say, well, as it sits right now, I don't know much about the wedding. I would assume at this venue, if you need a day, maybe 8 to 12,000. I don't really know until I know a little bit more about what you want. So if you'll let me kind of understand more of what you guys are all looking for, I could give you a better option. And I'm still giving them the details, but I'm not working from a script. And if I know the art of conversation and flow, and I know that if I can get them talking and start taking notes and hearing what they're saying and the kinds of words, if you notice, people will say like, I think, or they'll say, I feel, we feel. And if you can pick up on little cues like that, I'm a person personally that says, I think a lot. My wife is somebody that says, I feel. But I was talking to a bride this morning on a call, and she was telling me how important voices were to her and how her grandparents are all still alive. And she said the flower girl is too, and she knows her voice will change and voices are important. She kept saying that. And then in the proposal I sent her right after, I said, I know how important it is to capture the voices of people that are important, including your grandparents, the flower girls, that kind of thing. I'm able to flow with her and hear the things that are important, take those notes, and then say those things back to her in a way that actually fits with who I am as a wedding filmmaker. And so if all you're doing is working through a script, you're making a huge mistake. All right. Number 7. And this is kind of into some of the things I talked about in point 6, but number 7 is you get down to business too fast before making connections. So you're getting down to business too fast. You get on the call and you're like, tell me about what you want for your wedding video. Or like, how much are you willing to spend? What's your budget? Like those kinds of questions. I go back to the restaurant. If I come in and the waiter just says, what's your budget for your dinner? I'm like, wait a second. I don't know. Like, why do I need to know that right now? That's way like, how much do you want to spend on dinner? It's like, I don't know. Like, not much, as little as I can, please. Like, I don't want to go over budget. But if I get in there and start having a great experience and start realizing this restaurant is going to provide me an experience that I didn't realize it was going to provide me, maybe my pocketbook opens up a little bit more. And if you've done your job correctly as a wedding filmmaker, you've seen this where people, if you have like, what's your budget range on your contact form, which I don't recommend necessarily, and that's a different podcast for a different day. But if you know their budget coming in, a lot of times they'll raise their budget because they see the value that you bring. And so getting down to business too fast before making connections is a huge mistake. So find that common ground, then work your way into understanding their day. They're excited. They want to know, especially if you've prepped them correctly. They know the budget range. They kind of get an idea of how much you're charging. They know what the plan of the meeting is going to look like. They're not worried that you're not going to give them prices or trying to twist their arm. You've already done that work. So now just enjoy them. Be curious. Understand who they are as people. You don't have to get straight into the tell me how he proposed or whatever, but like you can get deep into some of these questions in 10 minutes and they feel a connection with you, and you can all the while show them and guide them to why you're the best fit. They might say, we don't know if we want to see each other beforehand. We're a little concerned about the timeline. And I'm like, well, what venue? I know the venue already. I know the wedding date. And I'm like, well, the sunset on your wedding date is going to be 7/18. So if your ceremony's at 4:00, you don't have to do a first look. Like, that's fine. What are you like? And I'm guiding them saying, we'll have plenty of time. I know at that venue, the sun's going to be low early because it's on a hill or whatever. And they're like, oh my goodness, I can't do my wedding. I can't do this wedding without John. He's going to help us a ton. He gets us. He knows what's important to us. He's regurgitating what we're saying in a way to like, he's telling us he wants to capture those voices. He wants to do those things. But if you get down to business too fast, you're missing out on all this opportunity to build a connection and have people see that they can trust you. If a waiter comes in, my wife has a gluten allergy, and he starts just spewing what he thinks is the best meal. Oh, you should try this pasta that's not gluten-free. And he talks for 15 minutes. And my wife is like, yeah, that's great. You just read all these specials, but you forgot to ask me, my allergies and I can't eat any of that. So you haven't helped me at all. And that's where if you get down to business too fast, you might miss out on some cues that could really help you not only make more money, but really serve the client. Like if the waiter knows that my wife can't have gluten, he might be able to say, oh, our kitchen, we have a separate kitchen just for people with gluten allergies. And everything is over here on this side of the menu is this, or here's this special menu for just you. The places that do that for myself and Heather, we go back again and again and again. There's a restaurant in town that they take such good care of us. We eat there at least once every week, 2 weeks. It's the most expensive place in town, but the chef knows that Heather needs her bacon, not fried in the fryer that the chicken strips are in, or like they just know what Heather needs. And it makes me open up my pocketbook more. And so the more that you miss out on connections too fast, the more you're going to miss out on bookings. Moving along, number 8 is you aren't listening to the cues. And all these kind of filter into the next one. And I've talked about this a little bit, but are you actually paying attention to what they are saying? Are you being curious? Are you thinking about them as human beings and not just dollar signs? If you're not listening to the cues and you're not paying attention and not digging deeper, not being curious, not asking more questions, you're going to miss out on really being able to serve. And so that's number 1 with that. It's like, are you paying attention to what they're sharing? Like, what are they saying? How are they saying it? I feel versus I think, or they keep reiterating certain parts. You can ask them questions about how, like, what they've seen in other videos that they don't like. You can ask them questions about like what makes them cringe about wedding films. Like you can find their pain points. You can get to know a lot by listening to their cues. And then you can knock over hurdles in their mind once they've told you those cues. Ooh, I hate whenever a wedding film is just like a music video. Oh, well, I hate that too. We incorporate dialogue and this is how we do it. And this is why it's important. And we're not going to make you uncomfortable on camera. We're going to give you softball questions to interview you. We're going to, whatever, you're listening to the cues. And then you can, I strongly recommend my good friend Sam Jacobson's deeper dive into some of these buyer types. He's an expert on the buyer types. It's helped me out a ton. But you need to be aware that some people buy differently from others. There are 4 different buyer types. Go listen to Sam Jacobson's podcast, the Own Your Business podcast. He's such a good friend and mentor for me. And a lot of what I teach now has just been reiterating things that he has dug deep with me. But different people buy different ways. My wife is an analyzer. She wants to read every review. She wants to know all the details. And so if she were hiring a wedding videographer, she would want to know every single thing that's in the contract. She would want to know the reviews online. She would have watched 20 different films. In me, I'm more of a boss type when buying things. I just want to know that it's going to be the best quality. I don't really care as much about the price. I want it to be like, I actually don't want it if it's not a higher price for most things. I want it to be efficient. I'm going to be asking the questions like, hey, let's get down to business. That's going to be more me. I'm also a dreamer and I want to be like, ooh, we could do this, or ooh, we could do that, or it'd be awesome to get drone footage of this thing and that thing. And what if we filmed the welcome party? So different buyers are different. You have to sell to them differently and you got to know the cues. And again, dig deep over on Sam Jacobson's stuff. He is a guru on the buyer types, and I am not going to plagiarize him. But if you're not paying attention to the cues, especially with the buyer types that you're meeting with, you might be annoyed when someone's a boss type because they're just trying to get you to cut to the chase. But if you do just cut to the chase with them and give them what they're looking for, they're higher likelihood of buying from you. And so just because they're different types of buyers than you don't mean that they're not an ideal client for you. And so that's one thing that you need to learn. So some people want to gab for hours. Some people want to just get down to business. They just want the numbers. They want the details. And some people are somewhere in between. And if you're not listening to the cues, you're not going to know what to do next. And number 9 on the list of these 10, hopefully these are helping you out. You're not taking good notes. And I know that there are built-in AI note takers and stuff now, but to me, I like taking notes right on my laptop whenever I'm talking so I can see on screen, like right now as I'm looking to my camera, I can have my notes right there. And so my eye line is just a little bit off looking at the camera. And I can say, yeah, I can see that you and Hunter, like I heard you when you said that you wanted to hear the voices. And this is like, you don't have to interrupt them. You don't have to interrupt them when they're talking, but you can reiterate that later on. You can look up on your notes and you can repeat back what you've learned. People love it whenever you've listened and they feel seen, they feel accepted. They hear like when you hear a pain point and you say, like if they tell you, yeah, I just don't want my film to just be an epic movie trailer. Now, to some people that they're like, that's what I do. To me, I can say, well, good, because I love epic cinematography, but a lot of my clients say the same thing. They are kind of just wanting to get something that's more natural and more classic and more timeless. And to be honest, I don't want to make stuff that's going to feel dated. I don't want to make stuff that's going to feel trendy. I want to show off the beauty of your day, but I want to do it in a way that's going to not seem dated 10 years from now. And by taking good notes on some of their pain points, I can then use that to say, this is why you're not wrong about your pain point. This is how you can be accepted. This is how you can be like, and when people feel accepted and seen and heard, it's like, oh, John gets me. He's not going to make like that thing in a way that I hate. I'm going to look good on my wedding day. I was nervous that I wasn't going to look good. And he reiterated to me that he's going to put me in good light and he's going to, make me sound good. And he's not going to, I'm uncomfortable about doing interviews. And he told me how he asked questions for the interviews. And I feel seen. I don't feel nervous. If you're taking good notes, you can do those kinds of things. Number 10, the last one, I've been talking about it the whole time, but your mindset is that you are the hero instead of the client. That's the huge mistake. Your mindset is that you're the hero, not them. That is massively the mistake. If you get on the call and start telling them about your accolades and why you think you're the best and why you're so good and you won these awards, and that's what you do the whole time, is like, this is what I do and this is how you're missing out on letting them be the hero of their own story. And in sales, you're trying to give people the experience that they're after. You can tell them the details and you can weave them into the conversation. But if you're just talking and telling them why you're awesome and that you're the hero, they're going to look and be like, that guy, I don't know. I didn't really like him. But if they leave the call feeling seen and heard, and they feel like they can't do their wedding without you, they feel like that they can't have any other wedding filmmaker or photographer would be the wrong fit. Like if they feel like that when they leave, guess what they're going to do? They're going to pay more, they're going to book sooner, and they're going to rave about working with you. And that, my friend, is what we want when it comes to our discovery calls. And so just to reiterate the 10 points real fast, because I know you want to get to your day. I appreciate you hanging on. Number 1, you're not even having a discovery call. Number 2, you aren't preparing for the call. Number 3, your studio space isn't professional. Number 4, the right people aren't on the call. Number 5, you're not telling them how the call will work. Number 6, you're trying to work from a script. Number 7, you get down to business too fast before making connections. Number 8, you aren't listening to the cues. Number 9, you're not taking good notes. And number 10, your mindset is you are the hero and not them. Guys, I've really been enjoying digging deeper on the podcast. So many of you, for real, have sent messages or comments. The numbers are up. The view count is up. The downloads are up. Because we've really taken 2025 and we've said, we're going to dig deep on the podcast. We're going to help you to another level in this podcast. We're not trying to be surface level. We're trying to give you tools to help you in your business. And if this is helpful to you, we're just asking you share this episode with somebody that needs to hear it. If you're watching online, you can always comment or like or any of that kind of stuff, which is helpful. But what's really helpful it's not so much so we can get the algorithms going or anything like that, is for you to just share this with somebody that needs to hear it, whether they're a photographer, whether they're a planner or creative. Like this content today specifically, it works for pretty much all wedding creatives. And so if you know somebody that needs to hear this, do us a favor, share it with them. Before I head out, as a reminder, our friends at VidFlow, sponsors of this episode, thank you guys so much for sponsoring us. Head over, support the people that support How to Film Weddings. They're who allow us to do this kind of content. Check them out. Check out the promos at howtofilmweddings.com/VidFlow. Last and very not least, I've mentioned it a couple times on here, I have some personal one-day workshops coming up in the spring. If you head over to John Bunn Films on Instagram, you can send me a DM, or there should be a link somewhere in my profile to get on the wait list for those one-day workshops. They're going to be business-related workshops, some of them styled shoots, but mostly business workshops. If this kind of stuff is helpful and you want to go even deeper, be sure to get on my wait list. I'm going to be going to 5 or 6 cities is kind of the plan right now for the year, and I'm putting together details for those. So anyway, that's all I have for you for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, we'll see you.